What was the decision behind doing this particular story as opposed to something else? I mean, we've seen you guys tackle some things that were let me say original as opposed to adapting material, but this is a really big one. This is a really big story. So what was the decision making behind getting into this particular story?
Well, the original Doomsday, Superman Doomsday movie did really well, and it's what started all these DVDs that we've done since. And it's been 10 years, and in Hollywood terms, that's usually around the time we remake movies, except Hulk. Then you do it every other year. But, so I think they felt it was time to revisit, especially since the first movie was limited in its running time. They only had one movie to tell the story, and so they chose to cut this part of the story out. So 10 years later, our bosses were like, that did really well. It's a good story, but because we were just starting out, they weren't confident that they could tell the whole story, which would have needed a long movie or 2 parts. So it's been 10 years. The original movie kick-started this line. The line's a success, and now they want to revisit it. So it's kind of not a do-over. It's more of a going back to the same source material and examining it in a different, more full way. And so that's kind of it.
What was the decision behind, say, we're gonna not do some of the characters that are in the comic books, we're gonna just use these characters instead? We're gonna leave these ones out?
I mean, because
there's a certain Green Lantern.
What?
There's a certain Green Lantern or X-Men.
Yeah. And there's also like Fire and Ice and Bloodwind.
Right.
Yeah, why do you hate Bloodwind?
There's a lot of people
Wait,
that
you left Bloodwind out?
people would go, who the hell is that? The thing I liked about this version is we actually have the Justice League to use. And as part of the thing is, people forget that the original story arc was a part of a continuity, an existing DC continuity. And that's why those particular Justice League members were in that story. And so we took that story, the idea of that story, and plugged it into our existing continuity. And so it just was a natural process of elimination. So we're adapting the story, meaning the general story, not the particulars of who was in it at that particular time. Because, there was a Supergirl in it, but she was a protoplasm or something.
Yeah.
Like, none of that would play as a story. You can't just say, oh, Supergirl's in this, but she happens to be a protoplasm, even though there's a Supergirl on TV who's not. And so there's necessary changes that had to be made to make it work. But the general story of how we get here and there is basically the same. The particulars are a little different because out of necessity. And, like I said, fanny packs and member jackets aren't in style anymore. Padded shoulders and mullets. But so yeah, some things had to change, but the gist of the story is the same.
Did the success of The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2 open the door for this two-parter?
I wasn't privy to those conversations, but I'm pretty certain, yeah. Probably, yeah.
What were the challenges of marrying the Justice League that you have from Justice League War, which is on a completely different trajectory, and then lining it up with the characters and where they are in terms of Death of Superman and the Justice League that was portrayed in the comics, where we start off, we see Wonder Woman and Superman are dating. We get here and that's been dissolved. That's been dissolved at some point.
Yeah.
Superman's no longer a character that's looked upon with squinty eyes. He's now a hero to the world. Any particular challenges in threading those together?
Yeah, it was challenging because if I had been running things, if I had my choice, we would have gotten to this a little later because I would have had another Superman movie in the meantime. I had plans for showing the breakup of Wonder Woman and Superman. I knew they would ultimately have to break up because that really doesn't make sense anyway. I don't know how they got together in the first place. I'm joking. But that question was solved a long time ago. George Perez, I think John Byrne did a story where they actually talked about why they didn't date. But I was interested in them dating because I was like, well, it'd be interesting not to see them date so much as to see how they break up and how that would go. And in Death of Superman, you see that it was an amicable split. They basically agreed that they were just too similar, that there was no yin-yang, there was just yin and yin. So, but yeah, with these continuity movies, sometimes we have to do a little time jump. Some things get left between the movies, and we kind of have to explain them in something happened, and we get the gist of what happened by their dialogue. And so, but it's challenging because you don't know. I didn't know we were going to do this movie as soon as we were going to do it. I thought I'd have a little more time to get to it and build to it. But, I don't set the schedule, so.
Well, despite jumping to the Death of Superman pretty quickly, a lot of fans feel that it's one of the best animated movies since this new universe kicked off with War.
Yeah.
So obviously Reign of the Superman from a narrative standpoint makes sense as a follow-up, but from a quality standpoint, why is it a worthy follow-up to the Death of Superman?
Quality? I mean, it was just natural. Actually, there was a movie in between this and production, so I was going to say we flowed right into it, but we didn't. There had to be another movie that got some attention, and then we picked right back up, which I think we needed the breather anyway, because both movies were huge. But I think tonally it's a different movie. It's not exactly in the same mode as the first movie. As I always say, the trajectory of the first movie is it starts bright and it gets progressively darker. In this movie, it starts dark and it gets progressively whatever it's going to end up being. I won't say bright, but it has a different trajectory. So, you got to have one part two. Someone's got to do it.
Might we see a Steel or Superboy movie in the future?
I mean, not in the near future, but I'm game. I thought they turned out really well in this.
Are there any characters you'd like to see appear in future films? Or?
I mean, I dug Cyborg. I think he was a kick-ass character, and he's one that I know fans have wanted to see in animation for a long time. And I think what we've done with them, well, that too. We've done Wonder Woman. She's coming into movies, so we are doing a Wonder Woman movie. So.
Now, you guys have been at this for a long time. What keeps you going? What about the process keeps it fresh?
It's a job.
What about the process keeps it fresh for you? So you're not saying, well, look, I need to walk
challenges.
away.
Like I said, I thought when I got this gig, I was going to just be doing what Tim had been doing, which is standalone movies. That's when he asked me to take over. That's what I thought I was going to do, and then they sprung this continuity thing, and it's like, oh, that's a challenge. So, I mean, I've done that for series work. I've done continuity, but for doing it for movies is a whole different animal because you get 2 movies a year to tell a story, and it's been about 5 years, and so a handful of movies that have to be connected.
Are we at any point?
Would you ever consider working in live action?
I mean, if they asked me, sure. I don't think they were going to ask me, but I like the freedom. Not freedom. That's the wrong word. There's a lot of leeway with animation. There's a lot more room to be creative without a lot of people signing off on it. And I've been lucky. Those people who worked at Warner Bros. We tend to have a little bit more autonomy in what we do to pick and choose. And I love animation. I mean, there's things you can do in animation you can't do in any other format. And so now, I mean, if they ask for some advice, sure. I'm full of advice, but I don't know if I'd want to have that huge responsibility of a huge gazillion-dollar movie. That's a lot of pressure.
Loose Tim had a similar response.
We talk about it all the time.
If you could pick one story to adapt that hasn't been done yet,
see, I'm old. I've read a lot of Batman comics and comics in general, and the stories that resonate with me aren't big fan favorites. They don't show up on these, exit polls they do at the movies or whatever. So, smaller stories. There's a lot of little small stories. Of course, I can't think of anyone right now, but But I mean, any number of Bronze era stories that are very simple at beginning, middle, and ends could be expanded into a movie. The adaptations are an interesting challenge, but the standalone movies, or not standalone movies, but the original plots we've come up with, I've liked as much or more than some of the adaptations.
Would you like to see Tim Drake and Superboy at some point get together?
I'll put it this way: I like Super Sons, and I like the concept. I don't know that it would be Tim Drake. It'd probably be more their current version, but I like Super Sons. I mean, I liked him back when it was the golden Bronze Age.
Right.
It was Bob Haney writing, and they all had mutton chop sideburns.
So are you telling us to look out for Super Sons?
Not for me, not yet. I would kill to do it, but no. I've made it known I'd like it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is it safe to call this continuity the Tuckerverse?
Well,
What do you call it?
people, I don't call it anything. The Brave and the Bold would be Tuckerverse for me, because that's something I really guided. But I don't think it's New 52 verse either. So I don't. It's not like we go into this saying, "Oh, we're going to name our universe after ourselves." Tim doesn't go around saying the Tim verse.
You
He might, but not. What?
You're not.
Oh.